It's not just about your being able to, like your physical voice. It's about your authentic power, that spark that is within you, that voice that is within you, that reason, that purpose. And so A Woman's Voice, the summit to me was about helping women really tap into that, because we're in turbulent times, to say the least. And as a collective, there are ways in which we as women are not operating in our best and highest interest. When you're not in the driver's seat of your life, other people will get in the driver's seat and drive over you.
Hello, welcome to Women Awakening. I'm your host, Cynthia James, and I get the opportunity to introduce you to inspirational women. And when I say inspirational, they inspire me because each and every one of them has said yes to their life, yes to their gifts, yes to their passion. Each and every one of them has said, I know I'm here for a reason, and I want to fulfill that destiny, that purpose, but I also want to help other people to do the same thing. So I'm just, we've done over 250 women and from all around the world, and they're all extraordinary to me, which means that they have stepped into that field of extraordinary living. So we are on every Friday. We're on all the platforms where you can get your podcast. We're also on YouTube videos, so you can see our beautiful faces. And and so you can go to cynthiajames.net. That's my website, and you can get gifts and join my private community. And please subscribe to the podcast and give your reviews. They matter. So I have someone that's relatively new in my life that I want you to meet today. Her name is Racheryl McCrary. And Racheryl is it says she's a master guide, but I think she's more than that. She's a master guide for conscious leaders. She's a presence expert, an executive coach, a spiritual director, and former performing artist whose career has been defined by one unifying thread: helping people transform, own their power, amplify their presence, and lead with purpose. Well, Racheryl, you are definitely a multidimensional person, so I can't wait to have this conversation. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having it. And that's one way to look at it and call it a multi-dimensional. Growing up, my parents were just like, settle on something, so decide on something, do something.
Me too. Me too. It's like you're just bouncing around. What are you going to do with your life?
I stay on that job, right?
Right. But I'm sure that there are people out there listening going, that was me too. So how did you grow up? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. So I grew up, so interestingly, my family is from the South, originally from Alabama, a little town called Evergreen, Alabama. And my parents divorced when I was really young. My mom did not want to raise me in the South, even though it was, post-civil rights era and all that. And so my parents divorced, we moved to Cleveland, and I grew up in a little suburb called Shaker Heights, Ohio. And it was it was known for being racially integrated. It was an affluent neighborhood that was experimenting with racial integration, even before we ever got there. And so my mom had heard about this place and she wanted to raise me there. And so that's where I grew up, was in Cleveland.
Wow. Okay, well, I want to talk about these three aspects of Racheryl. So let's talk about performing artists. Where did she come from?
Well, as a single divorcee, my mom put me in arts training after school. She didn't want me at a babysitter just watching TV. She was a little ahead of her time. And so she put me in arts training. I went to Caramoo, which is a very well-known probably the oldest Black theater in the country. There's a historical distinction it has. But I started taking arts classes after school, dance classes, singing, acting, that kind of thing. So that sparked the arts in me. And then fast forward, went to college, went to New York University, as a drama. Well, I wasn't sure. I was liberal arts, and then went to drama. Anna Devere Smith was there at that time, was my first acting teacher. I ended up being her personal assistant for a little while. I lied and said I could type, which I really couldn't. I trying to type her resumes and do stuff for her, hunting and pecking on a typewriter. But working with Anna sparked something huge in me that has lasted forever, because I saw her. She was just at the beginning of doing her work, or not the beginning, but she was beginning to do her work called Voices of America. She was doing these interviews, and and it was before the Crown Heights piece that made put her on the map. But what I saw was this woman who did not fit the mold of what, like everyone was auditioning for. I remember her colleagues were auditioning for soap operas and stuff. And it's like, Anna is not, like that's just not her, that's not where she fits, right? And so I just was watching this and observing this woman who was really beginning to break out in her own voice, in her own way of doing things and creating the road she was going to walk on. And I didn't realize it fully at that time. I was too young, but it has stayed with me forever. It's like there is a way that is uniquely ours to walk through this life. And I've been blessed to have other women in my life along the way that modeled that for me. So that's how I got into the arts, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, she was an example of leadership.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'm saying that because there's always a bridge. Everything that we do leads us to where we are. So you got to experience leadership firsthand and to be able to use that creative muscle that lives within you. And I want to know, so you work with leaders.
I do.
And so tell me the transition, because, I've been an artist too. I mean, I still consider myself an artist, but it's like, how did you go from performer to guide?
Yeah, that is a great question. That is a great question. So here's what my journey looked like in a nutshell. So, I basically was a professional theater actor. I did regional theater. I did a stint in LA, which is where you and I met many years ago briefly. And I was at Agape for a while, and I had an agent, and I was going out for commercials and doing all these things. And it just never fit. Like I just never really fit, right? And so the other thing about me is that I've always had a business sense. So I've always had I've always had the artistic side and the business side. Like I literally came out of the womb trying to sell something to somebody, right? And then trying to market it, right? I sold cookies. I always had that urge. So those two things existed in me. So I'm doing regional theater. I had done I created a nonprofit. I was sort of running that, doing arts education with kids. And a friend of mine introduced me to someone who said, "Hey, we need someone to do some training." At this company had a contract at the Department of Defense in Cleveland, Department of Defense accounting system in Cleveland, and said, "We need someone to come in and do training, like who's sort of dynamic and come in and blah blah blah." So I was like, I'll do it. And I went in and I did this training. This was like in 2000. I did this training, and it was training them on some like software, some new software, and people loved it. Like they loved the training. I got these great, because whenever you do corporate training, they give you reviews, right? I mean, not reviews, evaluations. And so I got these great evaluations, and I really loved it because I just made it come alive. Like I just made it more dynamic. I was doing storytelling. I was like showing them how to apply this stuff. And so the other thing, Cynthia, is the check I got from the company that hired me, like coming out of theater, and I'm looking at the check and I'm going, this is my day rate. Like what? Right? So that was like, oh my goodness, not only do I love this and I'm good at it, but this is like a whole new level of money here that I just wasn't used to being in theater, right? And so that's the thing that kicked it off for me, is that I had a skill because of my acting background, my theater training. I had a skill of communications, right? I can communicate, I can tell a story, I can train, I can teach. And so that's what got me into doing I then segued into corporate training. So for a decade, I literally worked for a company that hired people who had a theater background to go in and teach their executive presence training to corporate executives. So I taught at Harvard Business School, at American Express. I mean, all of these major corporations, business schools, government agencies, some I can't name.
Right.
I was there delivering training programs, and then they'd say, "Hey, can you coach our executives one-on-one?" So that's how it started, was because I had the communications and the presence skills from being an actor. And I also had a business mind. So that's the other thing, because I'm very business minded. So I was able to bring that to bear and then eventually started my own company. But that's how it started.
Well, it's beautiful. Okay, ladies, I hope you're listening here. because she gave up nothing to move to the next level. She took it with her.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about it. You just gave me chills.
So, I mean, it was beautiful to witness as you're sharing.
You just gave me chills. I didn't even think about it that way.
Well, okay, I want to know, you're a spiritual teacher. I want to know, where does spirituality come in and why is it important for you to round out who you are?
Oh, that is such a beautiful question. I'm so glad you asked that because here is the truth. Spirituality is the undergirding of every single thing in my life. All the things that people see on the surface that are happening, good and bad, right? All the things that are happening on the surface, um, are happening because of my deep spiritual practice and understanding. So I grew up in a non-traditional. My mom was very non-traditional. I grew up in a very non-traditional teaching, science of mind, and which says that there's a power greater than us and that we can use it, and that power is all powerful and all intelligent, and we are made out of it, right? And so we can co-create our lives. And so I grew up with that, and so it has been the bedrock of everything I do. And then I took a break from college to study. I found Agape and studied with Michael Beckwith, and Spirit told me take a break from college because Michael was still teaching practitioner training at Agape at that time, and I knew a lot of people who knew him, and so I did that. I took a break from school. At that point, I was the youngest practitioner in training, and it was important to me. So I was in the class with folks that we know, Tina Lifford, Derek Rydall. I mean, we were all in that same cohort. So spirituality has been what's guided me through, what's shaped me through, what's driven my career, which has placed me in different places. You know, there are things in my career, and places I've been and rooms I've been in that I could not have strategized to get there. Right. I couldn't have planned to get there because I didn't know it. Right. And so I just see all the time the fingerprints of God, just sort of moving me along. So it is a deep part of who I am. In my corporate world, I can't explicitly bring that in because that's not a part of the language. But I do believe that the people who want to work with me are wired in some way similarly, or at least we're able to be in alignment to do the work we need to do on their careers or whatever I'm working on.
Yeah. And I work with corporations and government agencies too. And you just reframe the language so that it's palatable, but
Right.
it's the same frequency.
Yes.
So, okay. So now here you are, you're this coach working with all these people. You also have a spiritual community that you are the spiritual director of. Oh, and by the way, you happen to have just done a summit. So, talk to me about, do you sleep?
You know what? I don't. This is what's so funny. I have so much energy. Okay. I have so much energy, and I've always had a lot of energy. And my mom always says, one of the reasons she put me in the arts was because she was like, this child has so much energy. I need to make sure I'm channeling that early. Get that locked in to something good early, right? So yeah. So spiritual community. So I was not planning to lead a spiritual community. I was not planning to do that. It was not on my bingo card. But I got called to go to ministerial school. It was like, just came through to me like, this is the next thing for you to do, which I did. And I was able to complete my ministerial school during the pandemic. So things that shifted so much, at that point with my corporate clients. I wasn't flying out to do trainings and stuff. I was doing more executive coaching. Things were more remote. So I completed ministerial school, and I was hired to lead a very established long-term spiritual community, which I did for a couple of years. And then I got the call that it's time to start my own community. And so I started Silicon Valley Center for Spiritual Living because I've always been in this sort of business world, spiritual world, creative world, right? Coach world. And what I found is that, like, in this community, that's who's being attracted, right? That's who's being attracted. Like, my board are all have been major coaches, for some of the top Silicon Valley companies, or been in some way wired up into that business. And so we shall see how this unfolds, but that's how I got there. You know what, Cynthia, I feel like I feel like there's some kind of grand design that's all coming together, and I have given up my control of trying to figure it out. There's something more intelligent than me that's working it out. So I got a lot going on.
Well, yes. Well, and let me just say, because I'm one of those people just like you,
Yes.
you know, when you can surrender, you understand that there are many pieces of the pie that are Racheryl. And this piece, she's a spiritual director, and this piece, she's a coach, and this piece, she's a performing artist, and this piece, she's a summit leader. Now, I did a summit this year, and talk to me about that journey. Did you know how to do a summit?
No, this was my first summit, and it was called a Woman's Voice Online Summit, and 20 plus powerhouse women, including the Cynthia James. I interviewed for this summit, really talking about how, as women, we find and own our voices. And because that has been, when I look back through the thread of my life, so many women have shaped my voice. In fact, many women on that summit helped shape my voice in some way along my journey. And it's not just about your being able to like your physical voice. It's about your authentic power, right? That spark that is within you, that voice that is within you, that reason, that purpose. And so a woman's voice, the summit to me was about helping women really tap into that because we're in turbulent times, to say the least.
Yeah.
And as a collective, there are ways in which we as women are not operating in our best and highest interest, right? And so, and when you're not in the driver's seat of your life, other people will get in the driver's seat and drive over you, right? They will drive right over you. So part of finding your voice is not about being aggressive, right? It's about being so anchored and centered and unshakable in yourself that you have personal agency to choose and create your life. So that's what that summit was about, which because you were there, and and our talk was so magical and so gorgeous. So thank you for that.
Well, I enjoyed every moment of it, and I love that people are still going to be able to have access to it. I want to know how people find you.
They can find me a variety of places. Shall I tell you where? Because it's not just one, right? So they can find me on a woman's voice summit.com. So that's one place. They can also find me on my personal website, which is RachelleMcCrary.com. And then if you are spiritually minded, you can find me at Silicon Valley CSL.com. And I speak every Sunday, but for about 20 minutes, do a power talk within our service. Our Sunday gathering is what we call it. So if you need some spiritual inspiration, that's what that time is.
Okay, ladies. Now that's 3 different ways you can access her. So do not fool around. Go out there and you know what? I mean, take advantage of the gifts that these women give. You know what I mean? Because every single woman that's on this show is a powerhouse and is doing amazing things, and you get access to them. So please use it. So I ask the same last question of every guest on this show. The show's called Women Awakening. What do you think is the most important thing about women awakening on the planet in this moment?
Mm. The most important thing for women awakening on the planet in this moment is really getting, I just said it actually. So, really getting centered, anchored in something greater and stiller and more powerful than you, and getting into the driver's seat of your life because you have the power to do that. It is your life, no one else's. And when we're in the driver's seat, then we can make choices and take actions that actually lift us up, allow us to flourish and thrive and rise. So that's what I would say.
Well, I couldn't have said it better. That was beautiful. Rachelle, thank you so much for being here and taking the time. I know you're super busy, but I just love what you're doing on the planet and the ways in which you are inviting other people to stand in their power. Grateful that you could be here.
Thank you so much for having me, Cynthia.
All right, ladies, I close this show the same way with different words every week. So your voice matters. You have a voice because you're here to use it. because there's nobody else that came on this planet who can do what you came here to do the way you came here to do it. So you don't have one more minute to play small or pull back your energy or pretend you don't know how, because even if you don't have the information in this moment, somebody or something is available to give it to you. So go out into the world, make a difference. I'm so grateful that I get to be with you every week. I love you, and I'll see you next time.